Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the latest episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. World's End. And I really like this episode. It did a good job of pretty much wrapping up most of the conflicts of this season while setting up what's going to be going on next. And that's pretty important because we've got the Inhumans that's going to be premiering before S.H.I.E.L.D. premieres back on in the mid-season. So we get a pretty interesting kind of place that we're going to be at the end of this episode in regards to that. So this episode was kind of divided into two parts, more heavily weighted on the Ada situation, but we also got stuff within the framework with Yo-Yo. So that part was pretty straightforward. We see Yo-Yo in the framework still strapped to the chair. She's like on her side screaming for like someone to help her, and this like Hydra agent comes in pretty much getting ready to kill her. Then that Hydra agent's taken out, and we see that it is Radcliffe. He's like, "You're valiant and mad to come in here for Mac." And he's explaining why he was pretty much there to begin with. He's like, "I was pulling out stuff from my pockets, these frickin' balls and everything. And then they were just like leading me here, and I felt like Pac-Man eating the biscuits and everything." It's like, well, I'm here to get Mac out, so help me with that. It's like, okay, but you don't really have that much time because Ada's kind of pissed off and shutting down the framework. And they turn around and they see that the room, a lot of stuff has disappeared. It's like, oh crap. And of course, this is at this point that we see in the real world that, of course, Simmons and Fitz got this notification that they've got about 12 to 20 hours before the framework's completely pretty much deleted. Simmons, of course, making the observation that all this code correlates to something in the world. So, of course, Radcliffe and Yo-Yo make it to the S.H.I.E.L.D. bunker because Mac has been pretty much getting people together to try and, like, get them to a place of safety because there's no news going on. People are randomly missing stuff. People are randomly disappearing. And Radcliffe tries to pretty much jog Mac out of it, saying, "You know this isn't real. You know your daughter's not real. Why don't you leave here?" It's like, no, she's real to me. I'm not leaving my girl here. And, of course, Radcliffe and Yo-Yo follow him on the bus, and of course Yo-Yo tries to do her stuff there, try to jog his memory, doesn't work, and then we see that the bridge pretty much disappears, and then he goes back on the bus, and all the rest of the people, except for Mac, his daughter, Yo-Yo, and Radcliffe have disappeared as well. So they go to Mac's home, and they're just pretty much trying to gather themselves up and figure out what to do. Yo-Yo's talking to Radcliffe about like how he could care about Hope since she doesn't exist in the real world and isn't real, and she'll disappear too. Of course, Hope overhears this, freaks out, and of course runs to Mac, and Mac's kind of pissed off but trying to console her and everything, and he's like, "Listen, she's my whole world. I'm not going to leave her here to die alone." And we see at this point that Daisy has been able to make a back door, and Radcliffe is trying to tell him to leave, and of course Yo-Yo decides not to because Mac is her whole world. So while this is going on, we see the rest of the stuff in the apartment and house start to disappear, and then of course Hope does, and we see Mac just kind of like lose it because this isn't really about the daughter at this point. It's about like all of the anguish that he's had at not being able to have that daughter in the real world, and it's really well done by Mac in this. And of course him and Yo-Yo hold hands, and then we see in the real world that Daisy's like, "I don't see Mac anymore." And, of course, we don't see Mac wake up right away, but we see Yo-Yo do it. And then, of course, Mac wakes up as well, and everything's okay. Now, at this point, I thought that it could have been possible that Radcliffe had taken over Mac's body. But we learned throughout that, like, when Mac and Yo-Yo were talking about, like, how that world gave him the glimpse of the life that he could have here, he reconciles with Yo-Yo and everything, and they're all right there. And we see the end of Radcliffe in the framework, talking about his regrets. Immortality may have eluded me, but it wouldn't have meant much without Agnes. And he's like, well, here we go. Not with a bang, but, and then he disappears. It's like, that was a pretty good end to his character, a very nice arc. It doesn't always have to be happy or sad, but a profound kind of change for the character. Seeing him go from, like, absorbed in himself to trying to help people, to trying to help Agnes, and then what that had wrought, and him trying to redeem himself by helping the people, and kind of going out in the framework. So that's the end of the framework part, and it's like, okay, that was pretty well done. So then the most and the bulk of the episode deals with like the whole Ada situation. We see Robbie get his Charger back, driving, trying to figure out what he's going for. We see the people on Zephyr 1 pretty much trying to have the autopilot make sure that they're not going to be taken out while making sure the framework is operational. We see Fitz kind of relaying to Simmons everything that he had done for Ada. She's like, is she human? Is she inhuman? He's like, both. Neither. It's kind of weird. We did all the experiments. We got pre-Terran Genesis inhuman DNA, put that into her body. Then he's pretty much beating himself up for all the stuff he did in there, killing Lincoln and all these other people, listing us all off. You should have this in your report, Gemma. She's like, no, that's not what I'm trying to do. We need to come up with a solution. She's like, all my solutions kill people. She's like, that's the idea. That's what we need for this solution. It's like, it's really kind of cool to see Fitz dealing with this, and I'm glad that it's not going away easy, but we gotta watch out how hard we beat on him for it. Otherwise, it's just gonna become a slog for that. So, we do see some balancing out in this episode, of course. This brings up the whole stuff with the framework, and they're like, okay, we gotta watch out for this, because it's gonna disappear in 12 to 20 hours. So, that's kind of where they're left off there. We get the information about, like, Talbot is like, well, what killed my men? Pretty much a psycho murdering banshee that's got teleporting powers and made from dark matter from another dimension. Okay, that's not really gonna work, but there's a shield inquiry that's going on, and I need you or one of your right-hand people to come here. It's like, well, we're pretty much the primary targets for this banshee, so that would not really work out that well. And of course, they get information that Robbie's charger has been stolen from Dover. Meanwhile, we get to see what's going on, because evidently Robbie really wants to go after Ada. And we see Ada starting her, like, whole stuff up, like, I'm gonna burn this world to the ground. And Spears like, whoa, I thought you wanted to rule it. And she's like, I'm not being reckless. This is what I want. I want to destroy S.H.I.E.L.D. and all this stuff. And it's like, oh shit. So, we see the Superior and actually some other people around. So it's like, are these like other LMDs and everything? It's like, okay. So, we see Robbie come in and he's like, I want that book and I'm here for you as well. And of course, he fights the Superior and the other dude uses his chain to cut off the one dude's head, which was pretty cool. And of course, Ada tries to go for the Darkhold and he uses his flaming chain on her and it hurts her. And she's like, screw this, and uses her lightning powers on him. That makes him go full Ghost Rider. And of course, she's freaked out now and she grabs the book and teleports out. And of course, Robbie's like pissed off, and that's pretty much where we're left at the moment until Daisy pops in and is like, hey, I thought I'd never see you again. And he's like, well, me neither. So, why are you here? I'm here for the Darkhold. Gotta get that out of here. And I gotta take care of Ada as well. It's like, alright, let's get this going. So, they take the one head, and they pretty much get themselves up to the Zephyr one and try and figure out a plan with Tech. Pretty much trying to facial ID who this LMD is. While that's going on, we see that Ada and the Superior are trying to figure out what's going on. Ada's like, why isn't this healing? And the Superior's like, well, he's from the same dark dimension you got your body's materials from, so I'd be careful around him. So, she sets up the Superior and the other LMD dude to go to this S.H.I.E.L.D. inquiry to pretty much poison against him. That's, of course, around the time that the S.H.I.E.L.D. people figure out, hey, that's a Russian analyst and his +1 is a Superior. We need to kind of stop this. So, they go off to stop whatever Ada's trying to do. So, we see the Superior and the Russian guy trying to turn the inquiry against S.H.I.E.L.D., saying that S.H.I.E.L.D. is breeding and recruiting and weaponizing Inhumans, and that the solution is in the Darkhold, trying to get the people to read the Darkhold. Of course, then we see what we believe is Daisy come in and shoot Talbot in the head, and Talbot was actually defending S.H.I.E.L.D. and everything. And it's like, holy shit! Of course, this is about the time that our S.H.I.E.L.D. party comes in, and we know that it's another LMD. So, Robbie goes off to kind of like figure out what's going on, and they get in there. He pretty much shoots down the Superior and the LMD dude. They kind of escape. They go after him. Coulson's trying to figure out what's going on with Talbot, who actually who has a pulse. And of course, his secretary or second in command is pissed off and like, hey, all this is going to be all over the news. We're going to bring her to justice. Like, it's not her, it's a replica. So of course, Daisy's the one to get to the part of the complex that has Ada and her LMD, and of course Ada's like, oh, I thought the best vengeance for you breaking my spine would be to have you kill yourself. And she's like, oh, that's really psycho. You could have just considered therapy and counseling and that kind of stuff and not kind of murdering people, but okay. And then, of course, we see Robbie come out of nowhere, fire chain Daisy's LMD, freaks out Ada, who then teleports away, and of course they don't have the Darkhold anymore. That's with Coulson and the team. And we get this pretty cool fight scene between the rest of the LMDs in there with Robbie and Daisy, and it's really pretty well done, because Robbie uses a drill and drills out the one eye, while Daisy uses pretty much a sheet of metal to cut one other one in half. Of course, the Superior comes in and throws a knife at Daisy, and he's like, I've got so many other bodies, doesn't matter, I'll win. And then, of course, Robbie throws a fire chain around him and is like, yeah, right when you say that, usually this shit happens. And flicks him in the air, and Daisy quakes his body down. And that's kind of where we're left with the Superior. We don't have any really good resolution on that part. So he can at least come out of nowhere, which is a pretty good effective villain. Dude who's pretty much a disembodied head who can create robot bodies for himself. So hopefully they do some more stuff with him on that point, because he'll pretty much be an effective villain for at least the human part. So that's all wrapped up. Everybody's on the Zephyr trying to figure out what to do, and Coulson starts coming up with a plan. He's like, well, your Ghost Rider dude really wants Ada, right? Yeah, he'll do anything for that, right? Yeah. Okay, so she won't come anywhere near you. We're going to use this Darkhold as bait. We've got to go into the bunker. That's how we'll work this out. So then, they pretty much worked out what they need to do. We see Simmons and Fitz in this, like, server room, and everybody else kind of, like, doing what they need to. Coulson's also talking to May throughout the episode about the Battle of Hague, and they kind of get their relationship back on track. He's like, listen, Robo May was way more supportive than this, huh? Guess we will have to talk about it. Well, how about this? We kind of reset ourselves, get another bottle, we talk about it at some point, and that's how we get into this. Alright, yeah, alright. Character development. And it was just really funny how it was done, because May was just still harping on that. It's like, it kind of pisses me off, man. It's like, listen, I could not tell the difference. Yes, she was a little bit different, and you could tell a little bit off maybe, but still close enough to the real May that I thought it was real. It's like, yeah, we don't talk enough. We're going to have to do that more often, and we'll actually get to that bottom. So they go their separate ways to kind of figure out what to do, and then the big stuff starts. Ada pretty much teleports in and is torturing Fitz by pretty much hurting Gemma. And she's like, I'm going to kill everyone you love right in front of you. And it's like, shit, that's going for it. And of course, she's pretty much stabbing Gemma with like this screwdriver that Gemma tried to like stab her with. And it's like, holy shit. And Ada's like, beg for her life and everything. Listen, I'll take you to Darkhold, just let her go. And she of course shocks her and everything, and Fitz is freaking out and all that, and he tells her that, like, Coulson's got it and reading it and setting up a trap, and of course, she teleports to Coulson. And then we find out that she gets shot, and then we see that it's actually Gemma with a machine gun and just, like, takes her, just unloads on her. She's like, no, that won't work on me. Like, yeah, felt good, wanted to do it. It's like, oh, okay, so they've used an LMD Simmons. That worked out pretty well. So then Coulson's like, yeah, but see, you've only been human so long, you don't really know the objective of teamwork. She's like, well, see, the thing is, the only one that can really hurt me isn't here, so, and, of course, Coulson's like, I don't know about that. And then he Ghost Riders up. And I love what they've done with all the different Ghost Rider people that they've had, because Robbie's got a different flaming skull than Mac, and, of course, Coulson has his own, and Ada's freaking out, tries to get away from him. He wraps a chain around her, and she teleports away. And she pretty much keeps teleporting them throughout different places, and they end back up in the bunker. And, of course, Fitz and Simmons are watching, and he grabs her, pretty much flames her, and, of course, Ada's looking at Fitz, and Fitz is, of course, still dealing with everything, and takes her and slams her ashes on the ground. He's like, yep, okay. And then it's really cool seeing Coulson talk to Robbie afterward, being like, That was horrifying. I don't know how you live with it. He's like, neither do I. And we had gotten some important information because Robbie's like, yeah, hell's relative. This kind of conflict's been going on forever. There's other dimensions out there as well. It's like, can we bring that in? That's going to be pretty cool stuff. Bringing in kind of more of the Doctor Strange kind of stuff with the whole multiverse and all that. It's like, ooh, how's this going to hold up? What is this hell-like dimension? Is this like Dormammu or something? Or Mephisto? That kind of stuff. And it's like, alright, I'm just glad you went back to you, Robbie. It's like, okay, should we tell him about the deal you made? Because evidently, Coulson made a deal with the Ghost Rider. He's like, I'll tell him later. I'll tell them when they need to know. It's like, oh, so what's that all about? So, of course, they get there. Sims is like, well, the gate's almost powered up. It's like, I don't need that. I've learned some stuff along the way. And, of course, they say their goodbyes, and they give Robbie the Darkhold. He gives his nod to Daisy, uses his chain to open up this portal. It is different than any other portal we've seen thus far, though. We can actually kind of see some kind of semblance of what is beyond this portal. And it looks like a planet or whatnot, or pretty much similar to an Earth-like dimension, but it's really grayed out, and it's got dark shapes in it. So Robbie goes off with the Darkhold, and that's the last we see of him. He asks them to take care of his brother Gabe and all that. And he was like, alright, anybody hungry? We got some time to eat before they probably arrest us or whatnot. And Vince is like, no, just leave me here. I'll take the fall for it. And of course, Daisy recognizes that, listen, I tried to atone for my stuff by pretty much leaving everybody alone and protecting the team, and I lost myself. We as a team do not hold you at fault for this, Fitz. Stay with us. Stay with the team together. And he's like, yeah, and it was really cool because it hasn't really been Fitz's fault. He tried to do something to help people. Now, granted, it completely spiraled out, but he was not really the main figurehead behind Ada. That was Radcliffe. Radcliffe making Ada the framework. This has been his stuff. Yes, he was complicit in it, but he wasn't trying to do the same things that Radcliffe was trying to do, being corrupted by the Darkhold. And hopefully we get to see him kind of like grow more past this and past the Hydra Fitz that he saw in the framework. So they go out there eating in a diner and everything, and it's like, oh, the outage was pretty cool. Nice touch, because these other people come in. This dude who's behind Phil uses this thing to freeze him. He's like, alright, 2-minute window. We gotta go. Bring him in. And that's kind of it. Then we see Coulson wake up in what could be a cell or whatnot, and he puts on his boots, flicks on something, and we see he's looking out, and there's asteroids, like an asteroid belt. It's like, they're in space. He's like, alright, enough sightseeing. Time to get to work. And then he goes out the door. It's like, this could be opening up to SWORD. It is a sister organization to S.H.I.E.L.D., which S.H.I.E.L.D. deals with more Earth stuff. SWORD deals with more extraterrestrial stuff and more kind of out there, and is more kind of like a offensive kind of capability to try and deal with things before they come to Earth, where S.H.I.E.L.D's like the last line of defense on Earth for that kind of thing. So that's a big opening, and also opens up of course, the Inhuman realm, which has usually been more extraterrestrial as well, since they've usually had a base on the moon. And of course, we'll be seeing that with like all the teasers that they've done, and kind of leaving that in with this show. It's really going to be pretty cool. So my only kind of quibble with this season finale is the leaving open of the Superior, but it's not that big of a detriment in my opinion, because the show needs its rogues to at least survive a little bit longer and have a pretty cool and defined arc. Ada had a good defined arc throughout this, and we need to make sure that they have their rogues gallery open that they can like draw on from time to time. Otherwise, they're going to keep killing people, and it'll be like, they need to come up with another villain. Luckily, they've kind of gotten their way out of that and just kind of make pretty good arcs with their villains throughout like the seasons, and Ada met her good character, and I say good in that she had an effective and fleshed out ending to her arc. Same with Radcliffe. That's the deal that I like. It doesn't have to be happy, it doesn't have to be completely bad, but it needs to show that the character has grown in one direction or another and face the consequences of their choices and of their growth. So that's why I really like what this has done for like the villains and the heroes, and where it's setting up for where Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is going to be going next. So those are my opinions on the episode. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.